talk a little bit about the function of the endocrine system and what it does, because it may not be as obvious as some of the other systems that you have seen or that we have talked about. So we're going to first start by defining the term endocrine, because that's really going to lead us to what the endocrine system does. So just like we do with all of our other terms, see if you can break down the word endocrine system. If you need to pause for a moment, look at this new word list. These are new word parts for you. Please do that and then come back and let's take a look at our answers, and then we'll continue our discussion of the function. Okay, so in this case, there is a prefix, and the prefix here is endo, which refers to being inside within an object. There is no root term in this particular case, and our suffix here is crine, C-R-I-N-E, which means to secrete. So the term endocrine is broken down into the definition of to secrete within, and we're talking about within the body, right? So that everything that happens in the endocrine system stays inside of the body. Okay, so when we think the endocrine system, what is it it's secreting inside the body? Well, the answer here is really hormones. So if we're talking about a hormone, that is really the endocrine system. Each of the organs we looked at either supports or triggers an organ to secrete a hormone, or it directly secretes a hormone. Those hormones stay inside of your body and create different actions. There are many of them. However, what they're going to do is create some sort of change or homeostasis inside of the body. Okay, so let's take a little bit of a look at what each of them secretes. So the hypothalamus, generally when you're looking at the list of hormones that are secreted by the hypothalamus, you often see this term releasing hormone associated with it, and that should be your sign that it is going to be released by the hypothalamus. So these hormones by themselves don't necessarily do anything. However, they're considered a releasing hormone. They go to another organ, which causes a hormone, which creates change inside your body. The hypothalamus also secretes some things like dopamine, somatostatins, oxytocin, vasopressin. We're not going to talk about all of these in detail, as this is really a medical terminology course. However, we are going to break down some of these words that help us to understand what they do in the body. Okay, next up is the anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary releases a number of hormones, so things that will affect the thyroid, things that will affect the adrenal glands. And the posterior pituitary really is only responsible for two hormones in general. So something we call antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin. So I always found it easier to remember that the posterior pituitary only released those two hormones. Everything else came from the anterior pituitary. The pineal gland releases melatonin. You may have heard of this. It is available over the counter. It is part of our ability to either be awake or to sleep better. But that hormone comes directly from that pineal gland. Next up, let's take a look at that thyroid gland again. And there are three main hormones that come from that thyroid. So thyroxine, triiodothyronine, and calcitonin. Remember on the back side, we had those four little portions of the parathyroid gland that sit on top of the thyroid. That one is a nice, easy one. The parathyroid gland is responsible for a hormone called parathyroid hormone. Okay, next up, and again, this is enlarged just to show some detail. I'm pulling it up for visualization. This is the thymus gland. Remember, it sat in the chest over the heart. This one is also rather obvious when you're looking at the hormone it secretes. This one is thymosin, which sounds very similar to the name of the actual gland that produces it. Moving down to that adrenal gland, there are actually different hormones that are secreted by the cortex, which was that outer edge of the adrenal gland, versus the medulla, which is the inner portion of the adrenal gland. So the adrenal cortex is responsible for some hormones like aldosterone, cortisol, and then a whole bunch of small androgens and estrogens, which are sex hormone related. The medulla, on the other hand, and the adrenal medulla in this case, is responsible for two big hormones, which is epinephrine and norepinephrine, and they are closely related. Okay, next up, we're going to take a look at this organ, the pancreas. There are two big hormones that we talk about here. One is glucagon, and the other is insulin. The pancreas does have some function in some other body systems, particularly with digestion. So it does produce some digestive enzymes. But in the case of the endocrine system, these are the two big hormones that we are talking about. So glucagon and insulin are the two big hormones of the endocrine system portion of the pancreas. Next up, we have the ovaries, and they are responsible for estrogen and progesterone. Okay, so those are the two main female associated hormones, and those come from the ovaries. If there are testicles, the big hormone that we associate with the testes is testosterone, and they are produced by some of the cells that are found right inside the testicles.